The email arrived at 9:03 a.m. on a Tuesday. Please join me in welcoming James Anderson to the engineering team. He'll be shadowing you for the next 2 weeks to learn our systems. I stared at my screen, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. After 12 years at Quantum Dynamics, I knew what shadowing really meant. They were replacing me with someone younger, probably cheaper, and I was expected to teach him everything I knew before they showed me the door. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I developed the core technology that turned Quantum Dynamics from a struggling startup into a $400 million company. Not that anyone in the current management knew that. The people who had been there at the beginning, who knew the truth about Qiddiya Secure, our flagship security software, were long gone. Victoria Kane, our new CEO, who had arrived 6 months ago full of fresh perspectives and strategic realignment plans, stood in my office doorway with a plastic smile. Behind her was James Anderson, looking uncomfortable in his crisp new shirt and trying too hard to seem confident. Sarah, Victoria's voice dripped with false warmth. James here is a brilliant graduate from Stanford. Top of his class. I know you'll show him everything he needs to know about our systems. Everything he needs to know. I almost laughed. The core architecture of Qiddiya Secure had taken me 3 years to develop, working nights and weekends in my tiny apartment, fueled by coffee and determination. The patent application I filed under my own name, before Quantum Dynamics even existed, was buried in a drawer at home, a security measure I'd taken when I first sensed the company's culture changing. Of course, I replied, gesturing to the empty chair beside my desk. Happy to help. Victoria's smile tightened slightly. We both knew this wasn't a request. In tech, when they ask you to train your replacement, refusing is career suicide. Not that my career at Quantum Dynamics had much life left anyway. James settled into the chair, tablet ready, eager to learn. He wasn't a bad kid, really, just ambitious, probably told he was getting a great opportunity to learn from a senior team member before taking over the position. I doubted they told him he was here to replace someone who had been with the company since it was 6 people working out of a converted warehouse. Let's start with the basics, I said, pulling up the system architecture diagrams. Qiddiya Secure operates on a proprietary encryption protocol. As I walked in through the surface-level functionality, my mind drifted back to 2011, when I first developed the encryption algorithm that would become Qiddiya Secure's foundation. I was 28, working as a security consultant, and had stumbled upon a way to dramatically improve encryption speeds without compromising security. Michael Torres, Quantum Dynamics' original founder, had seen the potential immediately. This could revolutionize enterprise security, he'd said, offering me not just a job but a partnership. We'll build the company around your technology. The patent had been filed and approved before I joined Quantum Dynamics. A deliberate choice on my part. I'd seen too many developers lose control of their innovations to corporate ownership. Michael had understood and agreed to a licensing arrangement that gave the company exclusive rights to use my technology while I retained ownership. That agreement, tucked away in the company's original incorporation documents, had survived 3 CEOs, 2 acquisitions, and a dozen reorganizations. Not that anyone had bothered to read those old files. They were too busy disrupting and innovating to care about history. Sorry, James interrupted my thoughts. Could you explain again how the primary key generation works? I smiled. That's actually proprietary information. Let's focus on the user-facing features first. Victoria appeared again around lunch, hovering like an expensive perfumed cloud. How's the training going? Great, James replied enthusiastically. Sarah knows this system inside and out. Yes, Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. After so many years, I would hope so. Though sometimes fresh perspectives are what we need to move forward. The message wasn't subtle. I was outdated, resistant to change, probably too expensive. Never mind that Qiddiya Secure's core technology was my creation. That every major improvement had come from my work. That our biggest clients stayed because they trusted my expertise. Over the next week, I taught James what I could, the public-facing features, the basic maintenance procedures, the customer support protocols. But the heart of the system, the proprietary encryption engine that made everything work, that I kept to myself, not out of spite, but out of principle, some things you earn through years of work, not 2 weeks of shadowing. Victoria called me into her office on Thursday afternoon. The HR director, Paul, sat stiffly in one corner, trying to look invisible. Sarah, Victoria began, shuffling papers on her desk. As part of our ongoing reorganization, we're making some changes to the engineering department. I kept my face neutral. Here it comes. Your contributions have been valuable, but we're moving in a new direction. More agile, more innovative. We need people who can adapt to rapid change. The irony of being called inflexible by someone who didn't understand the technology that paid her salary was almost amusing. We're offering a generous severance package, Paul chimed in, sliding a folder across the desk. 2 months' pay, health coverage through the end of the quarter. I opened the folder, skimming the agreement. Standard corporate language about confidentiality, non-competition, surrendering all rights to intellectual property developed during employment. When would this be effective? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Today will be your last day, Victoria said, not even trying to sound apologetic. James has picked things up quickly, and we need to move forward with our new initiatives. I closed the folder without signing. I'll need to review this with my lawyer. Victoria's smile faltered slightly. The severance is contingent on signing today. Then I'll have to decline. I stood up, straightening my jacket. I'll clean out my desk. Sarah, Victoria called as I reached the door. I know change is hard, but this is business. No need to be difficult about it. I turned back, meeting her gaze. You're right. It is business. Walking back to my desk, I felt lighter than I had in months. James looked up as I started packing my things into a box. Are you leaving? He asked, genuine concern in his voice. Yes. Apparently, I'm not agile enough for the new direction. But I've barely learned anything about how the core system works. I paused, a framed photo of the original quantum dynamics team in my hands. Some things take more than 2 weeks to learn, James. Good luck. Victoria watched from her office as I walked out, probably congratulating herself on executing another successful strategic realignment. She had no idea what was coming. At home, I pulled out the patent documentation, the original licensing agreement, and 12 years of system documentation. Everything that proved I wasn't just another replaceable cog in their corporate machine. I called Michael Torres, who had retired to Arizona 3 years ago. They finally did it, huh? He said when I told him what happened. Yep. New CEO, new direction, same old story. They have no idea about the patent. Apparently not. Victoria Kane seems to think everything belongs to the company. Michael's laugh was bitter. You were smart to keep the patent separate. What are you going to do? I looked at the carefully preserved documents spread across my desk. I'm going to remind them that innovation isn't just about moving forward. Sometimes it's about remembering how you got there in the first place. Need any help? Michael asked. I still know some people on the board. Not yet, I said, already drafting an email to my lawyer. Let's see how they handle the first surprise. That night, I sat at my computer, looking at the administration console for QD Secure's licensing system. A small piece of code, hidden in the original implementation that only I knew about. In 3 days, when the monthly license validation check ran, they would discover exactly who owned the technology they took for granted. Victoria Kane thought she was making a smart business decision, streamlining operations by removing expensive legacy employees. She was about to learn that some legacies are worth keeping. I hit a few keys, implementing changes that would take effect when the system next checked its licensing status. Then I went to bed, sleeping better than I had in months. The reckoning was coming, and I had front-row seats to watch it unfold. 3 days after my dismissal, at exactly 3:00 a.m. Eastern Time, QD Secure's monthly license validation check ran automatically. Within seconds, error messages began flooding the system. By 3:01 a.m., every instance of QD Secure running on client servers worldwide displayed the same message. License verification failed. Patent holder validation required. I was awake, sitting at my home office desk with a cup of coffee, watching it all unfold through the monitoring system I had quietly maintained. Victoria Kane's phone would start ringing any minute now. The first call came at 3:07 a.m. from Goldman Financial, one of Quantum Dynamics' biggest clients. Their entire trading security infrastructure had gone into safe mode, halting all transactions. By 3:15 a.m., 14 more major clients had reported complete system shutdowns. My phone buzzed. A text from James Anderson. Everything's crashed. No one knows what's happening. Help? I set my phone aside without responding. Poor James was about to learn a valuable lesson about corporate politics and intellectual property rights. At 3:30 a.m., my email pinged with an urgent message from Victoria. Sarah, there seems to be some sort of system malfunction. We need you to come in immediately to assist with recovery. We'll pay emergency consulting rates. I smiled at her attempt to sound professional while her company was imploding. My response was brief. I'm afraid I'm not available for consulting at this time. However, you might want to review the original patent and licensing documentation for QDS Secure. Pay particular attention to patent US 8,429,671B, filed under my name in 2011. By 4:00 a.m., Quantum Dynamics' legal team had discovered what Victoria should have known before firing me. I owned the core technology. The licensing agreement gave me the right to revoke access if the company breached certain conditions, including maintaining the original developer's involvement in the system's operation. My phone rang again. Victoria's number. I let it go to voicemail. Sarah, this is completely unprofessional. Her voice was tight with barely controlled panic. You can't just shut down our entire system. Call me immediately. I drafted a quick email to my lawyer instead, copying Victoria. As the legal owner of patent US 8,429,671B and pursuant to Section 7.3 of the original licensing agreement with Quantum Dynamics, attached, I am exercising my right to suspend the company's access to my intellectual property following their breach of our ongoing operational agreement. I am happy to discuss reinstatement terms with authorized representatives. The sun was rising when my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera to see Victoria herself standing on my porch, looking considerably less polished than usual in hastily thrown-on clothes. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. This is sabotage, she said without preamble. We'll sue you for damages. Actually, I replied calmly, it's asset protection. And before you waste money on lawyers, you might want to check with your board of directors. I believe they're already meeting to discuss this situation. Her face paled. The board? Yes. Apparently, several major shareholders are concerned about how a key piece of intellectual property was mishandled. Did you know that QDS Secure generates 60% of Quantum Dynamics' revenue? She hadn't known. I could see it in her eyes. What do you want? She asked, her voice softer now. I don't want anything. The board of directors, however, might have some questions about why you fired the patent holder of your core technology without due diligence. As if on cue, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went even whiter. Emergency board meeting in 30 minutes, she whispered. You should probably get to that, I suggested. And Victoria, thanks for your service. She flinched at hearing her own dismissive words thrown back at her. After she left, I received a call from Herbert Matthews, the board chairman. Ms. Mitchell, his voice was grave. We've just reviewed the patent and licensing documentation. Why didn't you mention this during your termination? Would it have mattered? I asked. Victoria Kane was brought in to modernize the company. Apparently, that meant discarding anything she didn't understand. The board has called an emergency session, he said. We would appreciate your attendance. I agreed to video conference in. No need to leave my comfortable home office for their corporate crisis. At 9:00 a.m., I connected to the board meeting. Victoria sat at one end of the table, looking like she hadn't slept. James Anderson was there too, probably to explain why he couldn't get the system working again. Ms. Mitchell, Herbert began, we find ourselves in an unprecedented situation. 17 major clients have threatened to cancel their contracts if service isn't restored immediately. Our stock price is already dropping in pre-market trading. That sounds serious, I observed mildly. Sarah, please, Victoria interrupted. Just tell us how to restart the system. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment stretch out. The system doesn't need to be restarted, I explained. It needs to be properly licensed. As the patent holder, I'm happy to discuss new terms. Terms? Victoria's voice rose. We own the system. No, Herbert corrected her sharply. We have a licensing agreement that you apparently didn't bother to review before terminating its key stakeholder. James raised his hand tentatively. I've been trying to understand the core encryption engine, but there are parts that aren't documented anywhere in our codebase. That's because those parts are proprietary, I explained. They belong to me, not Quantum Dynamics. What you have is a licensed implementation. Victoria started to speak, but Herbert cut her off. Ms. Mitchell, what would it take to resolve this situation? I opened a document on my screen and began sharing it with the meeting. I've prepared a new licensing agreement, I said. The terms are simple. I retain patent ownership and return to Quantum Dynamics as Chief Technology Officer with full autonomy over the technical direction of QDS Secure and any derived products. Additionally, I want a complete review of recent terminations in the engineering department. Good people were lost due to age discrimination and false claims of obsolescence. The board members exchanged glances. Herbert leaned forward. And if we agree to these terms, then I can have the system back online in about 5 minutes. Victoria stood up abruptly. This is extortion. No, Herbert's voice was ice. This is consequences. Please wait outside while the board discusses Ms. Mitchell's terms. As Victoria stormed out, I caught James trying to hide a smile. The board's deliberation took exactly 12 minutes. When they returned, Herbert spoke directly to my video feed. Your terms are accepted, Ms. Mitchell. The board has also accepted Victoria Kane's resignation, effective immediately. When can you start? I pretended to check my calendar, though I'd been prepared for this moment for days. How about now? I opened my laptop's command console and entered a series of commands. Around the world, QDS Secure systems began coming back online. James's eyes widened as he watched the monitoring dashboard turn from red to green. That's it, he asked. Just like that. Just like that, I confirmed. Sometimes the most powerful code is the simplest. Speaking of which, James, I hope you're ready to learn how this system really works. This time without the 2-week deadline. Herbert cleared his throat. Ms. Mitchell, the board would appreciate a full briefing on the technical architecture when you have a moment. We want to ensure nothing like this happens again. Of course, I agreed. Though I suggest we start with a review of the company's intellectual property management policies. After all, innovation isn't just about creating new technology. It's about respecting and protecting the innovations you already have. As the meeting ended, I sat back in my chair, allowing myself a small smile. In 3 days, I had gone from discarded employee to Chief Technology Officer. But more importantly, I had reminded Quantum Dynamics that true innovation doesn't come from flashy MBAs with buzzwords. It comes from the people who build, maintain, and understand the technology that makes everything possible. My phone buzzed with a message from James. Does this mean I still have a job? Yes, I replied, but now you'll be learning from me properly, not just shadowing. Hope you're ready for some real engineering. Outside my home office window, the morning sun had fully risen. Somewhere across town, Victoria Kane was probably clearing out her office, learning her own lesson of the danger of underestimating legacy employees. But my work was just beginning. I had a company to rebuild, a culture to fix, and a new generation of engineers to mentor properly. After all, that's what real innovation looks like. 6 months into my role as CTO of Quantum Dynamics, I sat in what used to be Victoria Kane's office, reviewing the changes we'd implemented since that dramatic night when QD Secure went dark. The wall that once displayed Victoria's MBA and corporate awards now showcased something far more meaningful: patents and technical innovations from our engineering team. The company's transformation had been dramatic, but not in the way Victoria had envisioned with her strategic realignment. We hadn't become more agile by discarding experienced engineers. Instead, we've grown stronger by recognizing and nurturing talent at all levels. James Anderson, whom Victoria had hired to replace me, had turned out to be an excellent engineer once freed from corporate politics. He now led our development team, having learned the true complexities of QD Secure's architecture. More importantly, he'd learned the value of respecting experience over buzzwords. Sarah? He appeared in my doorway, tablet in hand. You're going to want to see this. He handed me the tablet, displaying a news article. Former Quantum Dynamics CEO Victoria Kane's new venture files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. I skimmed the article, noting how her attempt to launch a competing security software company had failed spectacularly. Apparently, investors had been skeptical of a CEO who had managed to lose control of her previous company's core technology. Karma's interesting, isn't it? James commented. It is, I agreed, handing back the tablet. Though I prefer to focus on what we're building rather than others' failures, how's the new encryption protocol coming along? His face lit up. Actually, that's the other thing I wanted to show you. The team's made a breakthrough. I followed him to the engineering floor, which looked vastly different from 6 months ago. Gone were the sterile cubicles Victoria had insisted on. Instead, we had collaborative spaces, testing labs, and walls covered in whiteboards filled with complex algorithms. More importantly, the demographics had changed. After reviewing the terminations under Victoria's tenure, we discovered a clear pattern of age discrimination. Many experienced engineers had been pushed out under the guise of modernization. One of my first acts as CTO had been to reach out to those who had been unfairly terminated. Many had returned, bringing with them decades of valuable experience. Now our teams were truly diverse, with seasoned veterans working alongside fresh graduates, each learning from the other. Maria Chen, one of the legacy engineers Victoria had pushed into early retirement, was now leading our research division. At 62, she had more patents to her name than most Silicon Valley startups. The new hybrid encryption model is showing remarkable results, she explained, pulling up test data. By combining your original algorithm with the quantum-resistant approach David suggested, we've increased processing speed by 340% while maintaining security integrity. David, a recent graduate who would have been considered too inexperienced for such responsibility under the old regime, beamed with pride. This was how real innovation happened, through collaboration, not competition. The quarterly board meeting the following week highlighted just how much had changed. Instead of PowerPoint presentations full of business jargon, we had live demonstrations of technical achievements. The board members, who had once glazed over during technical discussions, were now actively engaged. Ms. Mitchell, Herbert Matthews began, the numbers speak for themselves. Revenue is up 85% year over year. Client retention is at 98%, and our market share in the security sector has increased by 23%. I nodded, but directed attention to a different slide. More importantly, look at our innovation metrics. Patent filings are up 150%. Our engineering retention rate is now 94%. Compared to 40% under previous management, and our technical support satisfaction scores are the highest in the industry, all while maintaining the highest average employee age in the sector, Maria added proudly. Experience matters. The board's support had been crucial in implementing these changes. After the TD Secure shutdown incident, they'd learned their lesson about valuing technical expertise over management ads. One afternoon, I received an unexpected email from Michael Torres, the original founder who had first recognized the potential of my encryption algorithm. Saw the latest industry rankings, he wrote. Quantum Dynamics is being hailed as a model of sustainable innovation. Want to grab coffee? I'm in town next week. We met at the same small cafe where, 12 years ago, we had first discussed building a company around my technology. Michael looked older but energized. You've done something remarkable, he said, stirring his coffee. Not just saving the company, but transforming it. Victoria Kane wanted to modernize through destruction. You've modernized through evolution. We had good foundations, I replied. Sometimes innovation isn't about tearing everything down and starting over. It's about building on what works while being open to new ideas. He smiled. That's why I made sure the patent stayed in your name. I knew someday the company would need reminding of what really matters in tech, the people who create and understand the technology. The conversation shifted to the future. Michael had been watching our progress and had ideas about potential new directions for the company. Not as a manager, but as a technical advisor, exactly the kind of experienced voice Victoria had tried to silence. Back at the office, I found James and the team celebrating. The new encryption protocol had passed its final tests and was ready for deployment. We couldn't have done this without everyone, James announced. The combined experience in this room made something none of us could have created alone. Looking around at the faces, young and old, new hires and veterans, I felt a deep satisfaction. This was what real innovation looked like: collaborative, respectful, and built on a foundation of shared knowledge. That evening, as I prepared to leave, I found a small package on my desk. Inside was a framed copy of my original patent, along with a note from the board. Thank you for reminding us that true value isn't about titles or trends. It's about recognizing and protecting the innovations and innovators that make progress possible. I hung it on the wall next to the team photos and technical awards. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful response to being undervalued isn't revenge, it's showing everyone exactly what real value looks like. 1 year to the day after Victoria had dismissed me as obsolete, I stood in the company auditorium, addressing our now expanded engineering department. The audience included not just our local team, but video feeds from our new development centers worldwide. A year ago, someone decided that experience was a liability and innovation meant discarding the past. I began. Today, we're ranked as the most innovative company in our sector precisely because we value both experience and new ideas. Real progress isn't about choosing between old and new, it's about bringing them together. I gestured to the screen behind me, showing our latest performance metrics. Our success isn't just measured in revenue or market share. It's measured in patents filed, problems solved, and most importantly, in the collective knowledge we're building. James, sitting in the front row, nodded in agreement. He'd grown from Victoria's unwitting replacement hire into a talented technical leader, proof that good engineers thrive when freed from toxic corporate politics. Last week, a reporter asked me what I did differently as CTO. I continued. The answer is simple. I remembered what matters in technology, not buzzwords or board presentations, but the actual innovation that solves real problems. That comes from people, all of them, regardless of age or background. After the presentation, I returned to my office to find an email from Victoria Kane. After her startup's bankruptcy, she was seeking new opportunities and wondered if we might discuss a potential role at Quantum Dynamics. I drafted a brief response. Thank you for your interest. However, we found that our best results come from valuing and retaining the talent we already have. Best of luck in your future endeavors. Then I turned back to reviewing patent applications from our engineering team. Real innovation was waiting, and it had nothing to do with corporate politics or strategic realignment. It had everything to do with respecting the people who create, understand, and improve the technology that moves us forward. Sometimes you have to shut everything down to make that point clear.